bring the meeting back to order. And, I'm going to go back to the legislative committee, item number 9.
I said, oh, you've got everything. You keep changing the rules all the time.
Commissioner Capurro.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The two remaining department issues are number 10 and 11 with regard to human-wildlife conflict funding and new licenses, permits, and fees. And I think that Kim is going to explain all that.
Kim Jolly, Management Analyst 3, for the record. I also have an update on number 12 through 14. I did hear back from LCB regarding our authority for those, but okay. I'll start with that. Number 10. The department is considering a BDR concept to help us fund human-wildlife conflicts. We've all heard that the general fund for that is getting cut, and we don't know how much will be left. And it's just a constant battle every year with, are we going to have a bear problem this season or not? And while we have been working with the local governments to adopt local ordinances against feeding and for bear-proof containers, we still have the issue of addressing how to fund the actual addressing the human-wildlife conflicts. So we're still looking at that. There's a likelihood that we may not be allowed to request a BDR that has a fiscal note to it, but we just would like to get support from the public, the commission, just to say this conceptual idea, we support this, whether we're allowed to propose it or not. Perhaps another organization could do it, but at least then we have it publicly vetted that that's a good idea. Do you want me to go on to the next ones? Okay. And then number 11, this is expand Nevada special fishing permit. Currently in NRS, there is already this special fishing permit, and it is NRS 502.077. It includes only a very select few groups of folks, and in 2003, as part of the negotiations for the fee bill, there were some changes made to that the department said, okay, in order to save this bill, we'll go along with these. And so this is our chance to clean that up. And what we'd be doing is, currently it is only the groups for disadvantaged children, mental health facilities, correctional or detention of juveniles, rehab centers, elderly care facilities, and foster care. But it's all disadvantaged. There's not any opportunity for Boy Scout groups, Girl Scout groups, nonprofit organizations for the benefit of regular children that aren't already having issues to get this special permit. So that's our other concept of that. The next three, while we were investigating our authority to see whether or not we would need a BDR, I did speak with LCB Council, and the first two, 12 and 13, would require a BDR. So the number 12 is a new fishing license for snowbirds. And actually, we had a meeting internally and just talked about what Arizona offers now, how we used to offer the Colorado River fishing license, and how just the geographic borders of Nevada, Arizona's already got a benefit because of there. So the best option we saw was just to bring back a version of the Colorado River fishing license for non-residents. And we're still looking at options for pricing and things like that, but certainly to make it comparable so that we can at least be competitive with the same kind of license that they offer. And then the next one, 13, this got a lot of conversation with the cabs, the shed hunting permit. And if I can, I just want to grab Rob, because he's been working with Bill Miller a lot more to fill this idea out. But this one would require a BDR as well.
For the record, Rob Bonamici, Chief Game Warden. With regards to the shed hunting permit, basically we do not have statutory authority right now to regulate shed hunting in the state of Nevada. It doesn't fall under the definition of wildlife. Wyoming was found to be in the identical situation. They since have passed legislation to address shed hunting, giving the commission the authority to address it, but it's rather unique in Wyoming. They were only given authority, I'm not sure I got this right, but I think it was east of the Continental Divide and not west, or vice versa. But that's the only place the legislature would give the state of Wyoming authority. So with that, all the states I talked to with regards to shed hunting thus far, pretty much the same states you saw on the presentation yesterday. None of them have a commercial collection type permit for shed hunting. I personally believe, from a law enforcement standpoint, that's a good idea to permit the commercial collectors for shed hunting. As far as the licensing of shed hunters, either a hunting license, permit, or the options out there available to us, or no license or a license in one party of the group. There's just a whole gamut of options available, but first and foremost, we need the authority to address it, and that we don't have at this point in time.
Rob, this is primarily concerned with the commercial gathering of horns for a commercial purpose, but it also would cover, the average person's forays to pick up sheds. And we'd have to have regulatory authority after even if a BDR was passed. Wouldn't that be correct?
That is correct. We'd want the broad authority under statute and then leave it up to the commission for the regulation end of it.
Okay. And as I understand it, unless you have something else to add, the 14th item is...
And this was one that we had thought we'd need a BDR for, and speaking with LCB Council, that's their opinion right now that we could do it in regulation. Of course, this is a very controversial program and political and things like that, so that would be something we'd completely require a lot of conversation with. But the basic concept is to help the landowner damage compensation tag program pay for itself, because as we all know, it currently does not. Right. So, and we're exploring raising the tag fee. Our contacts have already spoken with the people that are in the program, and this has been, I guess, a couple years going that they've been talking about this. And then also some sort of a administrative fee. There's current authority now to charge some sort of an administrative fee, like either at the end of the process with the tag or the beginning, but that's another thing that could be done in regulation. So that one is not on the list for BDRs, but that's just so you know we're talking about that.
And so basically, you have the statutory authority we have the authority to change the fee. The only thing you're not charging right now is an application fee or an administrative fee, which could be a good idea to help. As you mentioned, it doesn't pay for itself right now.
Right.
So, what we would be is there anything else you have on that?
Just that perhaps the way that we presented these, Rob presented the law enforcement topics 1 through 7 first, and then these are the 1, 2, 3, 4 other topics. If you could just take them like that separately and support these concepts.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Kim, maybe ask the director, have you been given any instruction about we can't raise fees or anything like that? Don't submit any bills with fee increases. Oregon just doubled their fees for non-residents here. They went from a non-resident annual 100, and we have better game than Oregon does, 76 to 140. And what's that? That's debatable? No, I don't think it's debatable. And their tags, they've almost doubled it. And if there's, and I think we ought to take a look if we can do it, and I don't know if we've been given any instruction on fees, but, we ought to take a look at that too. Our fees compared to what Oregon's done. I'll give you these if you want.
Yeah. No, we're way ahead of the train here. Of course, there's an election to come, and then whoever becomes governor will dictate to the departments and what we can and can't do. And then, of course, everything from our executive branch goes through the governor's office, and we send those ideas up, and then it gets edited and sent back to what we can and can't do. One of the things we try to do, because we're oftentimes limited by the number, we had 3 BDRs was all we could bring forward, so we try to be creative and take all the law enforcement ones and wrap it into one, and then find out whether there's outside folks that want to carry the bill instead of being a department BDR. I hope that we don't get no new fees, no new taxes completely, because you can imagine the last fee increase we got was in 2003, and we're living with that fee, and of course, ask yourself what are you paying for gas today compared to what it was in 2003. So.
Mr. Mayor, both the license fees and the tag fees are set by statute.
Right.
So you can't automatically change those by action of the commission or anybody else. So
correct.
We kind of a bad year to bring them up.
It's going to be a bad year.
But in any event, I agree. It's something that we need to take a look at.
And we have Patrick working on, as we have pretty much a good projection. You can imagine our hunting license revenue has been stable, slow decline in the fishing.
7% in license overall from 2007 to 2009.
So as a business owner, you can imagine got a declining revenue base, got increasing costs. Before you know it, you're out of business. So,
but you're not afraid to look at these and
no, I think we need to
submit
look at. And one commitment that I've made is that we want to squeeze every dollar we can out of the department currently. So we want to make sure we're efficient in every program, number one. Number two, we're collecting all the fees that are owed to us. We're battling with other agencies to make sure they pay us those fees. We want to look at all other grants that potentially we could bring in. Make sure that we are matching every dollar we can match. Heritage and all that, Predator. So we want to do a good job there. And then we can come and say, okay, here's the final number. We're still short by X. Will the Sportsman Commission, support a fee increase? Because that's what it'll take.
Sure.
In the legislature is a groundswell of support, the self-tax, basically.
Well, I'll give you these after the
That'd be
meeting
good.
and show you. And some of them went up real substantially. This other state, Idaho, just did that last year,
Right.
And I'll pass you these new ones down that will take effect in January, and they're really putting fees against non-residents. Really put a hit on them.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think. Why not raise a non-resident $1,000 on some of theirs?
But we also need to remember that without the non-residents, you'd be paying way, 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 way more for your license and tags.
Yeah.
Because it takes 10 residents to equal one non-resident. So,
Okay.
With respect to the the issues before us and public comment, we'll take the first 7 items for public comment, and that was the law enforcement ones. I should indicate to you that the legislative committee voted unanimously to support these departmental recommendations. So with that, open it for public comment.
This is just information anyway, so, right?
Pardon?
We're just the information.
This was in their package.
This information or
Action.
Okay.
Action, and the reason it's action, folks, is because the department has to have their recommendations into the LCB for drafting no later than April 1st. So there's some things, that's why we're bringing them up today and asking for action. So if not, I guess we bring them back to the board.
Yeah, let's bring it back to the board for any comments on any of those. Oh, we got a comment, come on. On any of the law enforcement items.
For the record, Bill Miller, White Pine County. I will address the law enforcement items. Our board actually went through all the department recommendations and broke those down by priority. And so at first, I would like to give you those numbers that we had prioritized. The first one would be number 13, which doesn't fall underneath law enforcement, but in a way it does. Number 3, number 5, number 6, number 1, and then number 2. I think the number 3 having to do with introduction of aquatic species really hits home with White Pine County. Cummings Lake was one of the premier trout fisheries in the western United States prior to the introduction of pike. People from all over the country would come to Ely and fish that lake. That place would be loaded every day. And we asked some of the local motel owners, say, do they come to ride the train or they come to go fish? And she says fishing outweighed the people that would come to ride the train. And there's a lot of people that come ride that train. Now you can drive by Cummins Lake and you'll be lucky if you see 1 or 2 people there. So this is a huge economic issue to some of those rural communities, and we really need to take a look at imposing civil penalties to prevent this in other areas within our state. And I'd like to come back again when you move on to the other issues.
Bill,
You
you
don't
are
like
saying that
pike.
the other issues that you didn't assign a number to, that you're
We were all in favor
of all
of them. We just prioritized our top 6 or 7 just to kind of give you a priority list, but we are in favor
You
of
do
all of them.
understand we're going to try to compress these into only a few bills rather than separate issue items like this.
That's fine. I'd like to talk on 13 if you'd allow me to do that now, or do you want to wait until you move on to that?
13 is which?
Should.
Yeah, I would prefer that we're dealing with the ones that are.
That's fine. I'll come back up
the law
then.
enforcement ones aside from these other.
Okay.
So you can come back then.
Any other comments on 1 through 9 then? If not, bring them back to the commission for any more discussion, or anybody have any ideas? What do you want to do?
I would move to support the department's recommendations for legislative action in the 2011
You going to
session.
specify 1 through 9?
On 1 through 9, yes.
1 through 7.
1 through 7,
Seven.
sorry.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to support the department's law enforcement field drafts 1 through 7. Anybody have any questions? If not, I'll call for a vote. All for the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Continue.
The other issues are items 10, 11, 12, and 13. A couple of them are still conceptual more than because we haven't been able to put the numbers to it. But so what we approved, and we approved all of these on a unanimous vote, was the concept of acting in this area. And we'll take a look at the numbers that fall out of it as we can. But we believe that the department should have this ability, and it's a revenue source in some cases. So I would open it up to discussion for items 10 through 13.
Step up.
14.
Did all the cabs get this? They know we're talking about these field drafts?
Use a field
They did,
draft for
yeah.
that.
Once again, Bill Miller, White Pine County.
No, we can already do that.
White Pine County agreed,
Council Bureau.
approved all of these. They're in favor of all of these. Especially number 13, which we listed as our top priority. I'd like to step aside and start talking about item number 13, representing myself. About 4 years ago, I was at a CRM meeting, which included ranchers, heads of BLM, Forest Service, other interested parties. And people were complaining about four-wheelers shed hunters with their four-wheelers, creating problems with the habitat, stirring up wildlife, disrupting wildlife, displacing them in areas in a winter range where there wasn't much feed. I mean, all these compiled. And so the Forest Service, along with the BLM, says, you know what we should do? Let's sit down and talk, and we need to start shutting these areas down to public access. And that didn't set well with me. And so what I told them was, I says, wait a minute, why don't you allow us to police ourselves, to develop some programs, and see what we can do. And so I got a hold of Rob Bonamici, and he came up with a little bit of funding. We put on some, we spent a lot of time developing flyers, radio announcements, TV and newspaper announcements. His staff, we spent a lot of time doing this. And then we went out and saturated some law enforcement. He had a little bit of money left over, and he manipulated some money, and we had more law enforcement in different areas in White Pine and Lincoln counties. And people knew we were coming. We actually, one day, we utilized an airplane, which saved guys on the ground time, saying, okay, here's where your hot spots are. What we have is we have people from Utah, I mean, that's the big word now, they shut their areas down, and they come into Nevada in groves. They're out there right now, and some chaining, some guys, some sportsmen told me the other day, totally upset, and they have 20 or 30 four-wheelers and a bunch of camp trailers, and what they do is they grid these sections back and forth with their four-wheelers. That is the same place that these animals need to forage. So we were able to do this, and we did talk to people. I've talked to local sportsmen. Rob and I have talked to people from out of state. And so I see that there's an initial $10 stamp fee, which would be appropriate. Non-residents, to coincide with the resident and non-resident, let's say elk tag, would be $100. So we asked these guys from Oregon, they do it every year, would you be willing to pay $100 for a shed stamp? They said, yeah, we pick up a couple of deer and elk horns, that's going to cover, helps us pay for our gas to do something we like to do, but that'll cover. So that will help us provide education and law enforcement. Right now we have people on four-wheelers on Mount Grafton, and there's no law enforcement. And I actually was present one day with Mr. Macbeth when this occurred. It occurs more often than not. So if we can do this, it'll be a self-funding program.
Explain, it's a wilderness area. So
yeah, it is a wilderness area. Mount Grafton, excuse me, it is a wilderness area. And so I believe that if we can sit down, and I'd like to participate in this program, I think it'll be beneficial. We talk about deer numbers and increasing our deer herds. And the conditions in White Pine County now, we have anywhere from 1 to 7 feet of snow in areas. On the average, a couple, 2 or 3 feet. These people are out there now pursuing these sheds. My concern is if this doe or this cow is stressed to the point she's going to abort or she's going to lose her young. So our herd is depleting. I do not want to take away my ability to go shed hunting. I like it. I love it. And it can be done in the proper method. But when it comes down to commercialization, people aren't looking at, they could care less as long as they're picking up those sheds. And this is where we need to have a program that will fund itself. So basically that's just a little bit of my concern, but I think that is one thing that we really need to pursue.
One of the things we discussed in discussing this item was perhaps that their permit would be no good from January through April, which could stop some of this. Is that an issue with you?
What I would like to see, and I didn't get to carry on with that, I would like to see from January 1st to April 30th, you would have to be in possession of a shed horn stamp. After May 1st, that would allow whoever was out hiking, hunting, I've got a deer tag and I find an elk shed, I'm able to pick that up without saying, we got to hide that under the bush so that I can run to town and pick up a shed, because that's a 400 shed. We don't want those issues. I don't want the issue of having to have a hunting license, because I know people that don't hunt, but they love going out, getting their exercise, getting out of the house just right after winter, getting some exercise, and shed hunting annually. They're not going to go buy a hunting license, but they would participate in a shed program for a $10 stamp.
So you're not in favor of prohibiting, like, the commercial end of things from January through April?
You're not going to prohibit it. They're going to have to pay if they're coming from another state. They're going to be charged $100. And I think too, this is just one
You were
step.
talking about stressing the herds.
Correct.
So that suggestion was made because this is right during the time when they're most vulnerable, is that they shouldn't be out there. You're saying,
No, they can be out there. If you see a herd of deer over here, you don't get in your pickup and chase them down to see if their horns knock off, or you'd be surprised. You would turn off the paved road in Spring Valley, and a mile and a half up there, you see there was a herd of deer. So you're going to get up and just stop and take a look and see if there's any bucks. As soon as you turn off the highway, the deer are running because they have been run for the last week. They'll run up and down that bench from four-wheelers. What I'm saying is we need to educate the people that they don't do that. It's part of the education.
So you're saying to do it as via education as opposed to, some other suggestion, which is to pretty much have a season for shed hunting and disallow it during the period of time that during winter, when the elk and deer are on winter range, and not allow it at all. So
no, we're back to the Forest Service BLM telling us we can't go on public property.
well, the problem
It hasn't
is-
worked in other states. We can't shut down a shed. We can't create a shed season. No, it never works. Actually, it backfires. It makes things worse.
The problem is that the education might work for Nevada residents who are shed hunters like you and me, but that education part is not going to impact those professional shed hunters, commercial shed hunters.
Correct,
We
but
can
this
educate them all we want to, that's not going to stop them. And I'm concerned about during the period of the winter feed area, period of time in protecting those herds.
Correct. And here's what that will do. This program will provide for education. This is what is expected of you. These are our Nevada laws. And we're also going to fund extra law enforcement to be present. The year that we put that on, people knew that there was going to be little stings going on around the state. I mean, everybody was in the up and up. Last year, they heard it was coming. We didn't go out there. They were present, but not as a sting operation. And people were asking me, where are they going to be, this weekend or next weekend? I'll just say, I don't know. They're going to be out there somewhere. So people were making sure that they weren't disturbing wildlife and running their four-wheelers all over the place. If you don't have law enforcement out there and have a program that supports law enforcement at this time of year, people are going to be running amok. You can park your vehicle. You can hike. We can educate them on what and what not to do. We're not going to take away nothing from them. We just want them to do it properly.
Let me understand this. You collect a $100 fee from a commercial operation that brings in maybe 30 guys to,
You're collecting it from each one of those guys. That's 3,000. Well, 30 guys, that's 30,000. That's 3,000, excuse me. 3,000.
okay, I think,
But what it also does,
I
Commissioner,
think that you believe something I don't believe, and that is that the kind of people we've got a problem with, the educational part of it is not going to affect them one bit.
no. But the law enforcement will.
Well, how are you going to law enforce? Because they're allowed to be out there.
Not to harass wildlife, not to be gritting out on the
I guess
BLM.
the question is,
Right.
what is the
RRP says you
definition of
can't
this?
be.
We're just, this is something we should hammer out in the committee, not at
Correct.
the commission level. Commissioner Rain?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was actually I was going to bring up is, I think that whatever support we have of this should simply be, if we're going to support something, we support bringing this item before a committee, perhaps the Mr. Capurro's committee, where all these details can be hammered out. I think that in general, there is an opinion that something needs to be done with this subject. I don't know that what is written on this piece of paper is the solution, but I know that we need to come up with a solution, and this meeting is not the place to do that. So if we could, put that into a committee meeting, we can have all this input at that point. where we can actually, then the committee can bring back a very specific recommendation. That'd be a better format for what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Right.
I didn't want this, the importance of this issue, to slide
This would be like
under
a
the
good
table.
One,
If you remember, the department's intent here, as they said earlier, was just, this is just to give us the authority to regulate shed hunting, and then those details would be worked out in regulations. So, yeah, we're going way beyond the mark here. So.
Yeah, we don't want to get involved, but Bill, at least, I gave Rob Bonamici, Wyoming's regulation and about these collectors. So this is on the front burner with the committee, and we are going forward with some type of regulation, or this commission does, or at least the committee's doing, because we've been working on this with Rob Bonamici for a while now. So it's starting to come up to and we will get a regulation, I hope, out of the committee. So stay tuned and work with us, because we are going to do
I will,
something.
and I know this audience, a lot of cabs, there's a lot of, everybody I talk to wants something done with it. We're on the ground, we watch what happens,
Right.
and that's what we want to bring forward to you when this is developed, and I would like to
Absolutely.
participate in this.
And so we're going to do it, so just help us work with it so we can get a good regulation out of it. And we're
Kim,
doing
did you-
that.
Kim, did you have something else you
I was
wanted?
just going to echo. Kim Jolly, for the record. I was just going to echo, we do not have authority now, per the LCB council, to address this or even have these conversations. So I think it sounds like we all agree, we are the department and the commission that would be appropriate to have authority to regulate this type of activity. And so that's what our concept is.
So you want at least the authority for the BDR, which
Right.
can be
And then all of these very important details can be in regulation.
I'm good.
Just real quick, the question was, I think, by Commissioner Capurro and you, Chairman Lent, was, did we all see this stuff? By the time that I had to post the Clark County agenda, this stuff came out in the time frame which, when I wrote it, got mine posted. So we had an informational discussion on all of these, and I will say from an informational, I can't give you a recommendation, but from an informational discussion, we supported going forward with all these BDRs, and knowing that in the end, the specific wording is what the cabs would like to give recommendations, as Commissioner Capurro on, because he pointed out anything we do here today, and Commissioner Raines pointed out, there's going to be language shifts and other things that we're going to have to work to. But, conceptually, from an informational perspective, at Clark County Cab, we supported going forward with these, and we thought they were all good ideas to move forward with, okay?
That's why there's no use getting in all these details back and forth till we get it down the road in a committee and get it out to the county boards and give us a proper wording for all these.
Absolutely.
Mr. Rain.
Thank
you.
On number 12, now, one thing I wasn't clear on what came out in the committee, on number 12 is, I'm sure that there had been concerns there that then, now some people could actually get licenses that are cheaper than those for Nevada residents? How did those concerns get resolved in this?
Well, I guess the concept is back previous to 2004, the department offered a Colorado River fishing license to non-residents only, and it was the price of an annual resident fishing license.
Mm-hmm.
In 2003, 2004, removed that, lost a lot of funding because Arizona continued to offer that license. Arizona also borders the Lake Mead area, and we don't have licensed agents in Laughlin, so there's another opportunity to sell Nevada residents this Arizona license. They also offer a 4-month fishing license. The issue is really trying to get that revenue back and provide more opportunity to, I guess, be comparable at least, if not competitive, with those two hugely successful licenses that Arizona has. So we haven't discussed exact pricing, but it would be, the concept was to bring the Colorado River fishing license back at a license that's equal to whatever the resident fishing annual license is.
Equal to, not...
Right. No, because
That was, I'm sure
that's another population as well that we don't want Nevada residents saying, oh, well, it's a cheaper deal for me to get the Arizona Colorado fishing license than it is my own state. So that's the other population that we're trying to attract back.
And currently, we're pretty close, but how is that current? I mean, I heard a little bit about that, but now that a resident in Nevada goes to non-resident Arizona, it is currently more expensive to be non-resident in Arizona, right? But it's close, isn't it?
Well, if they have more options, they can purchase this short-term 4-month fishing license at a discounted rate. They can purchase the Colorado fishing license that only is certain areas. With Nevada, all they have is the whatever $29 annual, and you're limited in where you can do it.
And the dailies.
So right,
They have
and
the dailies.
what happens is that if, at a certain amount of days, your price point breaks, and it's just not
Oh, yeah.
worth it. So, yeah, we pulled up. You know, we're still kicking this around, but we've pulled up Arizona's current regulations and their current prices, and we're not gonna get into a bidding war just on that, but we want to bring that license back because researching it.
So the details of
Didn't
these
make
prices just aren't there yet. I didn't see that, and that's why.
No, yeah.
So those details will come out before this BDR. I mean, it's the one thing to vote on a concept, but then, hey, what if I don't like the fees? I'd like to, another chance at it later on.
I guarantee you the fees will be less than Arizona, so we can scoop them.
Yeah.
And we lost $200,000
Well,
when
but-
this license went away, because what happened was we thought back then that people would buy a full boat license, and it didn't happen. The other thing that our folks in Vegas told us is that you live in Arizona or California and you come visit me, when you could buy your license with me, okay, here's a non-resident at the same price as a resident. But it's only limited to those waters where you have the Colorado River. So
That's one thing I was a little worried about, is this concept of trying to scoop Arizona rather than making them equal. Because, would it be reasonable for Arizona and Nevada to get into a pricing war on licenses? Is that profitable for either one of us? Could we,
they've already done it to us.
I don't know. Would cooperation between the states coming up with a
I really think this is
joint-
premature. I mean, we haven't even got.
No, but that's what I'm worried about, getting in some sort of a conflict rather than not working with them. The concept of scooping them rather than, hey, let's come to an agreement and
Right now, we can't
just
do it at
price
all.
fixing.
Can't do it at all.
That's why I'm just.
We have a
I
great
understand.
relationship with Arizona. Believe me, we're
Yeah,
not going to.
but I'm good with the concept. I just want to make sure that we're not doing anything that's going to really irritate their neighbors, and then
Just
they'll
trying to
scoop
level
us.
the playing field, right?
They'll
Exactly.
scoop us, we scoop them. Next thing you know, we're selling a $2 tag.
Yeah, but I
The
think
process
they're
is, of
trying to
course,
level the
that-
playing field and
that the department wants the authority to ask for a BDR. They only have to, at this point, have an outline of what that legislation that they're asking for is. We can fill in the details,
Okay.
but you've got to
Okay,
have an
thank you.
assigned BDR, otherwise you haven't got a bill.
we got to get the authority first.
Right.
I'm happy.
And we get the authority from the governor for the BDR, so even if we put something together, he may say, I don't like that. So it always helps if we can say, we have the support of the commission and the cabs for these ideas.
Thank you.
We ought to bring it back to the commission then. Rob, if it's any details on that,
Just real quick, for the record, Rob Bonamici, on the shed, conceptually for the BDR, it would include both recreational and commercial collection.
so there'd be separate
Both facets, yes.
facets.
We would need authority for both.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. What else you got?
That's it as far as the departments. I think we ought to act on those, and then we can discuss that one last issue on non-departmental bills.
So you want to do a motion? on
I
which-
would like to move that items 10 through 13, which was unanimously supported by the legislative committee, that we support the department's recommendation.
How about 14?
14
That's a drop.
doesn't
We
need,
don't need it.
if I understand correctly, we already have that authority. It's a matter of changing NAC.
Should we support it, though?
Not as
it
bill
would-
drive.
Not as a builder.
Not at this
Okay.
point, because
We
it's
don't
not a
have-
legislative. issue.
Okay. Is that a motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to support 11, 12, 13, 10, 11, 12, and 13
That's correct.
from the departments of regulation. Support those. Does everyone understand that? Any questions? If not, I'll call for the Question, all for the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay.
The
You want-
last issue we have, Mr. Chairman, is the non-departmental bill draft requests. We're not going to deal with the legal defense fund issue that was item number 1. And item number 2, I think we got the flavor of it yesterday, and I think we were all impressed with our DVM with respect to how they are reviewing the herd status up in the northern Rubies and the East Humboldts and that, along with the biologists for that area. So I think we are already doing what's under item 2, and that is to study what's going on so we can prevent it in the future. That leaves the one item of expanding the usable percentage of the Heritage Fund and its interest. And again, I apologize, the actual language that I had proposed didn't get to you, and it was my fault, until after the packets were sent out. Here was the thinking that I had on it, and that is this. We're faced with on the state level, we're faced with a shortage of somewhere around $900 million that they're going to be dealing with in a special session to be called around the end of this month. One of the things that has been mentioned by several of the leadership people is that they will look at every reserve account with the thought of sweeping those monies into the pot in order to address some of those concerns, along with the cuts that they're going to have to make. And some of those cuts are serious. I've heard it said that fund, we shouldn't say anything about it because, that just raises a red flag to those people. Trust me, they already know that $5.7 million is there. They already know it. The question then becomes, is there enough opposition to taking it for preserving teachers' positions or welfare or whatever else it might be, as opposed to the use of that money for sportsmen of the state of Nevada from whom it was collected for whatever purpose. And so my thought was that right now, the way the legislation reads, and it's evolved over a few years, is that we can spend 75% of the monies collected from the auction tags, plus the interest on the corpus of the fund in the Wildlife Heritage Trust account. Over the years, which means we can't spend anything out of the trust account. Further, if we don't spend it, if we don't spend the amount that I said, 75% plus the interest, in this year, unlike many other places, we can't roll it over to be spent in the following year. So that also goes into this sequestered fund that nobody can touch, except the legislature, of course. I have heard that, well, you can't do that because it's specific money for sportsmen. Well, I can give you 2 examples where I use the term the legislature giveth and the legislature taketh away. Several years ago, I believe it was Governor O'Brien had a shortfall, much as we're looking at today. Brian, not O'Brien. And in looking at all of the accounts of the state, they found that the state highway fund had a $6 million reserve to it. They took, now, the state highway fund is a constitutionally protected fund, not legislatively, constitutionally. Article 9, Section 5 has to be spent for building highways and administration for doing that. They simply turned around and said, well, then we're borrowing it. That was 20 years ago. That $6 million has never been paid back, never will be paid back. Just a few years back, Governor Miller had a shortfall situation like we're looking at now, and they did the same thing. They reviewed every reserve account in the state, and they found that the emission control and inspection fee account had about a $4 million balance in it. They swept it out. That was money paid by people who had their cars smogged, and it was used for programs that benefited the counties that had to, like Clark and Washoe, that had to carry on a program. So it was for a specific purpose, and it was gone. The same way with the $6 million from the highway fund. The highway department does not do any 100% projects. By that I mean every dollar they have is used to match some federal dollar. So, we lost not only the $6 million, but probably somewhere between 18 and 24 million that money would have supported. Same way with the emission inspection fees, except on a probably smaller scale. But my point being is that I feel that the $5.7 million is at risk. And there will always be an attempt to look at money that, if certain groups that have a lot of pull with the legislature feel that they're being taxed too much, they're going to look someplace else for somebody else to pay it. And I just don't want the sportsman to be that person when we put that money in good faith to do sportsman projects. If nothing else, I would at least like to provide for the future. If they sweep this $5.7 million and get it away, it's a moot point as far as that's concerned. But then we start building the fund again and making a target of it again. And all I'm saying is that if you don't like the 90%, fine. If you do, fine. I'd like input, and we're not going to take action on this today. So I'd like your input. We don't have to take action for a couple more meetings, so there's plenty of time for people to tear the language up and do with it what they want. But my proposal was to go to 90% plus the interest. That means that 10% would continually go into that fund. That that the department and the commission together on projects that they could agree on or major acquisitions that are agreed on between both the department and the commission, that the $5.7 million or whatever's in that fund at the time could be used to address those issues. And these are primarily things that you can't budget for. We heard yesterday, in fact, somebody mentioned, I think Patrick mentioned it for you. If you're talking about a helicopter, heck, you're talking $2 or $3 million. That can't be budgeted for. It's not, normal repairs and maintenance are, yes, they're covered. But if you have a seizure of the transmission in a helicopter, that's an expensive proposition, as NBU and the department found out. So, I hope you would at least give it the opportunity in some discussion. I will tell you this, that if there isn't any support for it, I'm not going to beat my head against the wall and try to force the issue. So it's basically up to you as to whether you think the concept is okay, and secondly, what wording would you use if this wording isn't? I have no pride of authorship.
Director Mayor, did you want to say anything about this?
Yeah, I guess, Ken Mayor, for the record, a couple things. I want to point everybody to this town hall meeting. I mean, what Mr. Capurro is saying could happen in the special legislative session, some portion thereof. So I would encourage everyone to go to the town hall meeting and voice your opinion as a sportsman, relative to what might be considered to be swept. I agree that I think that we don't have an emergency fund. And if something happens, I don't want to debate on how big that should be, but if something happened, I don't really have the ability to come to the commission, for instance, or any other body and request dollars to fix whatever that happened to be, whether it's, you know, a gearbox or whatever. So that would, from a manager's perspective, would be a really good option. You know, whether we bring it down to $1 million or whatever, at some point, you know, I think that interest rates will be back up, and, you know, history will repeat itself. So, you know, we want to be prudent there, but you know, I do agree that we should be adding to the pot, and you've allowed for that with up to 90%, with the ability to come to the commission, and in concert between the department and the commission, you know, spend some of those dollars in emergency mode is probably a good idea.
I talked to the director last year on the Heritage that we need to, I was going to set up try to get a $50,000 emergency fund set up, and was told we can't do it because if we set it up and then we don't expend it, we don't have a project out there, we lose it June the 31st. And he said, well, there might be a project we can hold off and throw it in at the last minute to use the $50,000, an unplanned project, but we needed that, and I've been for that all along. And I want to ask Clark County, in your minutes, you made a number, item number 3.
My recommendations or my draft?
In your recommendations?
Yes, sir.
Where you said if the commission cannot protect the sportsman dollars of this fund from the legislature and state, we have larger problems. What did you mean by that?
Paul Dixon, Clark County. I believe that with this board's kind of unique unfettered access to the executive and legislative branch, I'm looking to Commissioner Capurro, who's had a tremendous amount of experience here. I'm looking to you, Chairman Lent, with your relationships that you have with the governor, being professional relationships you have with the governor and long-standing relationships with the governor, that if we can't, this commission cannot convince, working through the legislature by going to the meetings and talking to things, and talking to basically protect sportsmen's dollars that have been set aside for sportsmen's dollars, and we get overridden, then I think that it wouldn't have mattered what commission was here. We stand the best chance of doing it, and if we can't do it with this commission, I think our bigger problem is we're going to get overridden on many other issues related to sportsmen, when we have basically the best stacked deck, I think, to inform our executive and legislative branches here of the impacts of this and try to mitigate or eliminate those issues. That's what I meant by that, sir.
Do you believe that it's all upon
Excuse me, let me finish this, okay? I get from the feeling that you're going to blame us, but you look at the governor, he's $985 million short, and there's $5.7 million here, and he's got to cut school teachers, which are votes, and he's got to cut schoolroom, and he's got $5.7 million sitting here doing nothing. He's got to make those decisions, and if you think anybody in this commission or the director has the authority over the governor, you're sorely mistaken. And my feeling is, if the cabs are not behind this bill, they are directly responsible for our loss of these funds. It's not this commission, and I get the feeling from that you're trying to blame us. And I want to put on the record that this is not the first time. At the last legislative session, they threatened to do this, and we didn't do anything about it. The sportsmen didn't do anything about it. The past commission didn't do anything. For 10 years, it's been a problem, and no one's done anything about it. The cabs haven't come forward to do anything. The department, everyone's to blame. This commission is the only one that stepped up the plate through our Commissioner Capurro down there.
Agreed.
To do something about it, and we're going to go forward with it, and then we get all this flack. If you look at the cab recommendations, they don't want to do it. And like Commissioner Capurro said, if you don't want to do it and we lose it, it's not our fault. It's going to go right back on the guys that didn't support this, and these are your dollars.
Well, Chairman Lent,
we deserve them.
Commissioner Capurro stated very correctly, and I was going to ask the question, but he answered correctly. We have, if we fail, whether we pass his recommendations, which I'll come back to, having had further discussions with him, and the further discussions you'll see in my minutes will come out before the next board meeting at our cab, but we didn't have the exact wording, so we didn't make an exact action on those. He basically said, independent of what we do, if we don't change this, it's going to get swept anyway. So whether it gets lost or not has nothing to do whether we change or support what he's suggesting. The sweeping is a different issue from where we want to go forward in the future. If I'm correct, Commissioner Capurro, they're two separate things, and we need to handle those separately. One is we need to get out, mobilize people to support getting in front of our legislatures and letting them know it's a mistake to take this. And the only reason I point to this board is we have the unique opportunity from knowing the legislatures where Commissioner Capurro could say, these are the legislatures that we need to lobby the most because they're going to be trouble. You could go to the governor because you have that access. You can go to the governor because you have that access and say, look, who do we need to work to make sure this doesn't happen to us? That's issue one. Issue number two deals with the exact proposed BDR wording that the Commissioner Capurro put up. I believe that our CAB, in and of itself, is not against. I mean, Commissioners Howell and Commissioner Macbeth both talked about conceptually where you were going in wording. I think the exact wording, and as you pointed out, we got a couple months to fix that. I think overall, our CAB is not in disagreement with having the heritage funds for use for emergency and using some of those things out there. It comes down to specific wording so we don't have abuse of power with those funds, and I'll leave it at that.
But we have to go forward with this, and this commission, the only one that tried to save these funds, because I've never heard a recommendation from any CAB to this commission to try to save these funds. And I keep hearing they're not in jeopardy, they're not in jeopardy. And you know, to tell Commissioner Capurro he doesn't know what he's doing, we're not going to lose those funds, and that's what the testimony. Oh, we don't have any problem. We ain't going to lose those funds. And tell him that's been in the legislature for 40 years, and I've been working for 35 years, is really wrong. And some of the cabs don't know what reality is if they don't think we can lose these funds. And we, this commission, through this conceptual bill draft, we want to go forward with the bill to try to at least draw them down before they take them away.
You're not going to get it. You're not going to get this draft passed before they sweep them, correct?
No, it was not the intention of.
I mean, you're mixing two things, Commissioner Chairman Ladd. I mean, I think Commissioner Capurro had it right.
Let's understand something. There are two separate issues. One is the 5.7 million, and hopefully we can, you know, we can get a clean sweep. We can prevent them from taking it, and we can pass legislation that allows some sort of access.
Yes.
And again, I just wanted to further the discussion.
Which you
we've
did,
got time.
artfully.
We've got time. The department does not on their issues because of their deadlines. We have time to put this together so that everybody's on the same page. If we aren't, there's no use going forward.
Correct.
So you're on notice now. You have the language. There is one other thing in here, and Kim, I'm not sure it's necessary to put it in here. I'm not sure I addressed the issue of the carryover. I guess if we have access to the 5.7 million, the carryover is immaterial. Is that your?
This might be a moot point anyway, depending on, wait to see what they do in the special session. It might be a moot point. We might not have it, but we still should go forward. But
well, I would agree. We didn't have enough at our CAB meeting for me to give the solid recommendation because it really comes down to conceptually. If I'd had a little more information, I told Commissioner Capurro, I could have argued in that meeting with Commissioners Macbeth and Commissioners Howell of that it's a concept we want to sell. People were thinking that this was, here's the wording, we're going to make a decision now on it. There wasn't enough communication. I've committed with Commissioner Capurro and Commissioner Howell and Commissioner Coburn that I'm going to spend more time with them prior to these meetings so that when I have my meeting, I have a little more information so that I can help give the right flavor to my CAB. And so what you see reflected in there is that without having that background information, whether it's through ignorance on my part or not getting out and getting it, I was not able to steer the CAB and public that were at my meeting. And this was the largest meeting that I've had in a long time. Commissioners Macbeth and Howell can talk about it. I had 20-some people there, like 26, between NDOW and public. I mean, it was a good-sized meeting. When you start shifting and getting things rolling in there, it's really hard to steer a larger group when you don't have all the facts to control that. And I didn't have them personally, so I didn't control that as chairman, which is a failing on my part.
And I really don't think you guys understand reality, because if the director, and I know what his answer is, if he thinks he's got enough muscle to convince the governor not to take this, he's laughing. If you think I have the muscle, I'm going to laugh too. So if you guys think that we got the ability to protect this from the governor, you guys don't have reality. Because we don't have the ability to do that.
You can protect it, but I think you can make the governor, who's a very bright man and who has strong loyalties to people, think twice and push for things, whether it's a veto or whatever, whether he gets overridden, the governor can make a statement and push, and he can also let through, and I believe that Commissioner Capurro could help the cabs if there are specific legislatures as we start to go into the special session that we need to lobby in Clark County. I know that the people in Clark County would be more than happy to individually write or go see those people before they go into that special session.
That's been my point, that it's got to be more than to just say that the board needs to take care of this. The groups, whether it's NBU, the Alliance, the FNAZ, or Wild Sheepus organization, and others are going to have to help us with this, because by ourselves, as Jerry said, we're not going to.
Well,
I can't go to Barbara
sure.
Buckley, who's been the one primarily involved here, and tell her, Barbara, you can't take that 5.7 million.
Well,
My butt would be going out the third floor window.
Barbara Buckley right now is trying to protect the over $1 billion bond reserve that they have down in Clark County right now, because they're not building schools or repairing roads, because we actually have a population flattening or decrease in Clark County because of the economy. So they have this huge bond reserve sitting down there that more than engulfs the current state budget shortfall. And, you know, I look at that and I say, you have a $5.7 million pot and you have a $1 billion pot sitting here. I mean, there's politics to be played, but it may not be as easy. It may be easier to take some portion of that than it would be if we put up a fight down here.
Especially since Barbara is term limited and can't run for re-election, so she's got nothing to lose.
Correct.
And there are several other leadership people.
And I just want to make sure that you understand that the director and myself are doing everything we can to protect Sports Fund. They belong to us, and Patrick Cates, and so we're doing everything we can to protect those funds. But, unless he's got a magic wand that can stop the governor from making his decisions, and we don't know what's going to happen, but, we are supporting preserving our funds in every way possible, and we've had some conversations and that are confidential ones, and they're going to stay that way, and we're doing everything we can. So I don't want us to get blamed, department or this commission, because we are doing everything we can.
I wasn't looking to assign blame. I think it was basically saying that the former chair of this commission that I know and I see almost daily, which is Ron Lurie, he had a relationship with Governor Gwen, never or not even near as close or with as much visits or detail that you have up here with the governor currently. So I think you have a greater chance of influencing how the governor thinks than the former commissioner did, and that's a personal opinion.
There wasn't
at this point, I'm gonna have to jump in and say we're far beyond the agenda item, and I think we need to move on, frankly.
All right, Mr. Chairman, does everyone have a copy of this?
I agree.
Sorry.
So,
Public comment member that think he says harmony for an hour.
Rick Smith, Washoe County Cab. Couple things I want to talk about on this. First of all, I'm going to talk from our cab side point. I've mentioned to Chairman Lynn a number of times on the subcommittees about the request to appoint a cab member to each one. I understand the difficulty of that. What we decided at our last meeting to do was we're going to try and turn it around a little differently. We, as cabs, have an obligation to try and get as much information on the items as well. And we haven't done a good job of that. At least my county hasn't done a very good job, in our opinion. And one of the things we're going to try and do is at our next meeting, we're going to assign a member of our board to each subcommittee to listen in on the meetings or attend the meetings or whatever, because we have to take a proactive approach to this. Okay, I commend Commissioner Howell and Macbeth and Corbin for attending the county meetings. I would encourage the rest to attend the meetings as well. We haven't had a commissioner in our meeting since July, not one. Okay, and I'm not pointing blame. I don't mean anything by that, but it's also good information that you guys have that could bring it to us as they are to the Clark County. But we're gonna take a proactive stance on this and try and get more involved in the subcommittees, even if it's only as the advisory that we are. As far as this topic goes itself, I think if you read our minutes, Chairman Lent, you will see that we were not opposed to it.
Right.
We are opposed to the language in general of the 90%. We believe the 75% is adequate. We are not opposed to looking at, it was worded very well at our meeting. One of the people stand up and says, you got a big hunk of cheese and you got a lot of rats out there looking for the cheese.
Was that the one that took you five motions to get something?
Yeah, I think it was. But it's true. There's a big pot and everybody's looking at it right now. We have a lot of shortcomings funding for the department. And we are all in favor of having that, I'm going to call it the base 5.7 million available to an extent. Whether it's $1 million, that's still to be worked out, we understand. The one thing that we would really like to see, and your wording said that it's approved by, may be approved by the commission and the department. And we would prefer to say that it must be agreed on between the department and the commission. But we got to have an avenue to
Well, you know, it's the concept and the wording, this is just a first draft, but wouldn't it be nice, like right now, to have that ability? So when we need $65,000 right now for the sheep, we've got the money, could go in there and do whatever we can to save our sheep. That's what it's for. And it'd be so nice to have that available. And this was just the first run and to try to get the concept out to say we'd like to spend it, but we've had some boards to say we don't want you to spend any of the money, but well, I think we really need to, Rick.
And I agree with you, Chairman Litt. You know, you guys can all look at it. Let's just use California. They just lost a helicopter and some employees. I mean, you lose a helicopter, what is that, $2 million?
Yeah.
You can't say, well, we lost one, we just will do without. You've got to have an avenue to make it up, and this is an avenue to make it up.
Right.
So,
by the way, that was a nice catch. I just intended that had to be jointly agreed.
Okay, so you know, the theory of what you're coming up with from our cab, we supported. We say that we think that you need to stay at the 75% plus the interest, but the base amount, we agree that there should be an avenue to be able to come up with emergency funding or, you know, funding that is desperately needed. It might not even be an emergency. It might be just a piece of equipment just wears out and you cannot plan for everything. So we would support that as long as we get an agreement that it's both the department and the commission.
There's a lot of work on here because, like, you don't want to use the word emergency because when you put that in a bill, then the legislature says, oh, we got emergency too, and here's emergency funds in here. So there's a lot of work. You got to be careful how you write this bill and how you present it. And so, and we've got a guy that's been working on it for many, many years. So we'll work it out if we can get everyone behind us and help the department out to get it. And I think the department, you know, there's some other avenues we can do to get some of it, but if we can get, you know, if it's still there after the special session, I think we got to do something, and that's all we wanted to support because I was on the committee, and if we can get the support of everybody for what we want to do, that's going to go a long way.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
An excellent example of this came up yesterday, as a matter of fact. They need $67,000, almost $68,000. They've had a pledge from NBU for 25, something like that. Had this bill been in effect, we could have gone into the Heritage account with the joint agreement of the department and provided that additional funds. And that is an emergency sort of thing because of what's going on with that die-off.
Right.
That's just one example of the kind of projects.
Yeah. Okay, one more, and then we'll go on. Commissioner Cavan. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
I just want to chime in on an experience I had on the Heritage Committee. The department had a project that was involved capturing some animals a couple of years ago, and they weren't able to expend all the money on that particular Heritage account because of weather and different things. So anyway, there was some money available. They had another project that they wanted to spend the money on, a good project, and they weren't able to do that. So the rollover provision in this is real important. So we don't want to overlook that.
Well, that's something that
as we go along.
the legislative committee will go forward with, and it's going to be too late for this Rocky Mountain problem now, but it's not going to be the last problem we have, not the last crisis the department has. Commissioner Howe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clear things up a little bit, the two basic reasons for going from 75 to 90 is to quit increasing the target and to have funds available that we don't have available now because the interest rate is so low. We're getting like less than 2% interest. And that would have made up for some of the shortfall from the interest rate, and it would also eliminate this target from getting so big so fast.
One other point, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
The law reads not greater than 75%. If we changed it to 90, we can adjust that figure back down if necessary.
These are some concepts I think you should work out in the committee with the CAB support and bring it back to the commission and for fine tuning and go back and forth working with the department on it, you know. So let's move on to the next. These are action items. These are second reading. Commission General Regulation 374,